Oh, keeping me up. My 2-year-old's teething, so she was awake at 4 o'clock this morning. But thankfully, it was my wife's turn. I was up with her at 4:30 yesterday. So I said, boy, I don't want to come to the budget process low on sleep. It's one of those dangers of yawning all day, right? Yeah, it's getting better every day. We're moving.
I'm just about ready to go. Not quite. to get going? No. Yeah, as soon as yeah, there's two here and we'll get going. Are we gonna leave this here? Or? Oh, sorry. No. I don't want to leave it there because I can't see Mike. Yeah, that's the only reason. But this is where. Yeah, so we can put it up and down. As long as you're okay. You can share it with me. Well, welcome back, everyone. Before we get back here to the public health summary page and budget, I'd like to get a consensus that we'll go to 4 o'clock today. I don't know how that sits with you folks, and unless I hear of any strong objection to that, we will go to 4 o'clock today. And of course, you, Andy, can leave the books right on their desk. Is that fair? And just leave them there. Marlene, back to you, and I certainly have a note here to talk about conferences. And Mr. Robichaud, I was asked while you were out of the room before lunch, do you know when we'll be seeing any report or numbers on conferences for 2016?
We'll distribute that later today.
That will be distributed later today. Thank you. Marlene, some suggestions perhaps from you to get us jump-started here on looking for any possible savings. Do you have any ideas? Yes, you do. Thank you, Marlene. Could we hear them?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There are a few suggestions. If you recall from our budget deliberations last year, under the nurse practitioner bucket, there was a position that was a .09 of a nurse practitioner that we have never been able to fill. And last year, Council or Board of Health did direct staff to gap that, and we have gapped it, and we continue to gap it. So we could continue to gap it because it would be challenging on a good day to recruit. And that would be a savings of $17,000.
Councillor Black, could you have raised that hand any faster? I don't think so. Marlene, go ahead.
So the actual amount would be $17,570. So that would be for consideration. We will be putting in another grant for the contracted services for the health audit that we've budgeted $47,000. We could look at reducing that, recognizing that we may be have to have discussions with the ministry on potentially extending some of those timelines if that grant isn't realized, but that would be another consideration. And as far as training and conferences, Susan and I can go back and look at it again. The challenge there from a public health perspective is that there are a lot of mandated certifications across multiple programs that are requirements. So we'll look at those that are absolutely mandatory, and any that we could potentially reduce. Can't make a commitment on a number, but definitely can commit to looking at that over the next month.
That's it? Okay, thank you, Marlene.
I'd like to say that our program managers have actively gone through the budget and made as many reductions as
we're
they
well
can
aware of that.
already.
Thank you for that, Marlene. I'm well aware of that. Thank you. Okay, Councillor Black, did you want to make a motion on the 17,570 to reduce the vacancy of the nurse practitioner? I'm going to deal with these one at a time.
Yeah, I'll make the motion.
Thank you.
And thank Marlene for
motion is on the floor.
it.
Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to be rude. Okay, thank you, Councillor Black. The motion is to reduce that position, which wasn't filled this year. 17,750 on that. Councillor Oliver, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thanks to Marlene. But Marlene, you say it's a 0.9 FTE, and yet it only represents a savings to us of 17,570. So is this a cost share when it's 75/25?
So through the mayor, it's a .09. My apologies if I stated .9. It's a .09 of a nurse practitioner, which equates to the 17,570 that we did not fill out last year.
Okay, all right, thank you. I probably heard .09 and hoped I was hearing .9. Maybe that was my problem. Thank you.
Any other questions on the motion, Councillor Brunton? No, we're going to do the motion, and then we'll get back to you. If not, those in favor of this reduction, that's carried. Marlene also mentioned to reduce a portion of the budget audit response. Thank you. I should have said the audit budget. What was the amount on that? Again, I didn't write it down. Maybe she didn't give it. She's whispering to Susan. Hi, Marlene, did you have amount that we could reduce the audit budget by roughly? I think you mentioned the total cost was 50,000.
In the budget, we've actually allocated 47,000.
47?
40.
It was in it. There was a $33,000 reduction. The whole one for the one time was 50 grand.
Okay, I'll stand corrected. It is 50 grand because we did do an adjustment, so probably $10,000.
You've heard that proposal. Councillor Height?
Mayor Luca, through you to Marlene. Now, you mentioned you can reduce that with the hopes of getting a grant?
Through the mayor to Councillor Height, yes. We have already submitted one grant that we haven't heard from, as I had shared during the audit presentation, and we are going to put another one for a one-time grant. So if we do receive a grant, then that would be a savings of whatever the total amount that council approves.
Could we also hope to get grants to reduce the budget down to the 5% Councillor Brunton asked for earlier?
Through Councillor Mayor to Councillor Height, staff are currently reviewing the one-time grants for program-based grants, and we will be submitting as many grants as we possibly can within the criteria moving forward.
Okay, but now what happens if you do not receive this $10,000 grant?
Through the mayor to Councillor Height, if we reduce that, we would continue to implement the recommendations. If we are outside of the timelines, we would have to discuss it with the Ministry of Health to achieve that over the next couple of years and delay some of the timelines from the health audit recommendations.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Council, anybody, Marlene seems to be comfortable with suggesting a 10,000 from the 50. Anybody wish to move that? Councillor Columbus? Motion then is on the floor to remove the health budget audit by $10,000. Discussion? Those in favor? Carried. And finally, before I get back to Councillor Bratton, you're not comfortable right at the moment suggesting even a small reduction in conference, seminar, and training of the 118, I believe?
Staff have already looked at that, and they've already made some reductions throughout the program. So I'd like, given that Ms. Taylor is new to the team, I'd like her to have an opportunity and myself to review it before providing a number.
Councillor Broughton, back to you.
Thank you, Mayor Luke. Well, can we bring it up on here? Does it give us any kind of a breakdown on the seminars and training and all that?
Through Mr. Mayor to Council, there's a breakdown there between training and memberships. When you look across the whole corporation, not just this department, I had a piece of paper here with those numbers written on it, thank you. The total training, the total seminars and training budget across the corporation is $826,500. That's 1.3% of the salary and benefits budget, which is typically the measure that's used to determine the level of training. But included in that training account, you'll see here, there's training and development and memberships. If we look strictly at training and development, the amount of money that we spend across the corporation is $659,000, which is just over 1% of the salary and benefits budget. I'm not an HR professional, but I talked to Candy about this, and 1 to 2% of the salary costs, salary and benefits costs, is normally the rule of thumb for training. So we fall right into that, at the lower end of that 1 to 2% scale. And what distorts it a bit is because we've got memberships in here. And those are memberships in provincial associations, professional associations, and all the rest of that stuff. This is actually the training and development component.
Well, let's look at both of them. Is there a breakdown in them or what?
No, I can't give you the breakdown unless we go in camera.
Oh my God, you mean we can't have a number of how many people have memberships?
We can probably do the membership.
Like there's no names in memberships, I assume. Like there's $23,000 in there in one department for, what is that, like for 10 nurses to have memberships in the Ontario Nurses Association? Like and how much are they each?
Here they are by function. So we've got public health administration, there's, Got to be very careful when I try drilling down any further, because if we start seeing people's names, then we have to stop.
That's fine.
But this is the next level breakdown. How do I see if I can find? Why is this not giving me what I want? Huh?
Why would that go from public health administration? Is that am I looking at a total there, or is that, like, went from 2,000 to 12,000? That's a big increase. Why is that?
Marlene, can you answer that question on the increase from 2 to 12?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. To Councillor Brunton, the increase there actually, as I stated in my opening remarks, was for reinstatement of the Alpha, which is the membership of the public health that Board of Health had directed in 2018 not to renew the membership. We are recommending that we do renew our membership with Alpha. When we did this budget, it was understood that it would be a $10,000 membership for the public health. However, when I spoke with the executive director last week, the membership is 6,800, so there is a small reduction there. Back in 2012, from reading the reports, the budget was 5,800 for that, and there had been a recommendation for a significant increase. So the Board of Health at that time did not renew their membership. We are strongly recommending that we do become members again. We are missing significant opportunities as being part of this association. We are the only health unit in the province that is not a member. At times we are receiving information from Alpha, but the information that we are receiving is through informal channels and not directly from Alpha itself. Alpha provides many benefits to public health across the province, and just a couple of simple examples which would also help with the audit would be that they're currently working on a risk management strategy with all of the public health that we don't have the opportunity to leverage those resources, so we're having to source some of that out ourselves independently. And another example, also as a recommendation from the audit, there is a document that's provided by Alpha on the governance of orientation and training for our Board of Health that we could leverage, but not being a member would be inappropriate to leverage that document and utilize it. So those are just some key benefits for that. So that is why there is that increase there in the Public Health Administration.
Well, my question is, are we obligated to be members, or is it by choice, I guess?
Through the mayor to Councillor Brunton, it is voluntary, and we were members for many years, and the board did direct us not to renew. And as I've stated already, there are disadvantages of not being a member of this organization.
Okay, and my other question on that same line is maternal and child health team, $6,200. Does that apply to quite a few people, or is that one person? Can you explain that one to me?
Just a minute, please. Okay. So that is for the baby-friendly initiative. It's basically an accreditation. It's a one-time cost to our public health. We have deferred this in the past. Several years ago, we were the lowest performers. The team has actively worked towards this accreditation, but we do now need to have the assessors come in and do the accreditation. The ministry is monitoring the progress of our performance indicators. So again, this is a one-time membership or a one-time cost that we should be implementing this year.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Height, then Sonnenberg.
Thank you, Mayor Luke. Through you to Marlene, you mentioned that the board of, or no, the health board or committee, whatever it's called, they cut that amount of funding for that membership. Did you take it back to them, and did they approve this level?
Through the mayor to Councillor Height, there isn't a level of board. You're either a member or you're not. From my understanding, back in 2011-12, the association had recommended a significant increase to the membership. They did come back and not do that increase. The Board of Health at that point in time chose not to renew it anyways, and we haven't been members for about 4 years now. But it's either you're a member or you're not, and the amount is based on the size of your public health.
Right, I mean the committee. There's that committee that some of the people here sit on that discuss the health stuff. Yeah, that committee. Have they approved that?
Through the mayor to Councillor Height, no, we have not had that discussion at that table.
Okay, with that, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to move a motion to have that cut by $10,000, and I'd like staff to send it back to that committee. And if they approve it, it can go in the budget next year, but I don't feel right without further review on that.
So your motion is to cut $10,000 from? Mm-hmm. Is it the seminar training conference line?
Well, that administration part of it, you have to scroll up.
I guess I just want to know which line
Public
on page
health.
5. It would be a part of the seminars training, is that correct?
Association of Local Public Health Associations, that one.
Okay.
I'd rather get a comment from our committee. We haven't had it for years. I don't think it's pressing.
Okay, I do have a motion on the floor to cut that $10,000 line figure out. Association of Local Public Health Association. Discussion on that motion. Sonnenberg, before the motion, I noticed did you want to speak on this specific one? I'll get back to you because I do now have a motion. Columbus and then Oliver.
Yes, if we cut 10,000 there, what would the repercussions be?
Through the mayor to Councillor Columbus, as I said, there's many benefits to being a member of Alpha, and one of the biggest things is the risk management that we are not a part of. So in essence, if we leverage the benefits of advocacy and resources that they provide, we could potentially reduce the consulting fees, etc. That would support us in moving some of the recommendations in the health audit. Some of the work's already been done by this association through the different membership, so we would just, as members, leverage those opportunities. So there's a cost savings by, we may not need to hire a consultant to do some of the work for the health audit if we can leverage the work that the association's already done.
So are we penalized, or are we in a position where we not get grants from the Ministry of Health because of this reduction?
Through the mayor to Councillor Brunton. There's no mandatory obligation to be a member, so I don't believe we would be penalized for not being a member. It's the benefit that they bring to the public health.
Thank you, Councillor Columbus. Councillor Oliver, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I quite clearly remember several years ago when council approved a recommendation to remove ourselves from Alpha, and if I recall correctly, it was the senior management within the department at that time that made that recommendation because of a pending large increase in the fee. So I appreciate what Marlene has been giving to us by way of an explanation, and I do feel it is a valid expense in this particular budget, so I can't support the recommendation.
Anything
In
further?
other words,
Sorry.
Mr. Mayor, the decision to remove ourselves as a member several years ago was based on a staff recommendation. We're now getting a senior staff recommendation that there are merits today in 2017 of going back into this group, and I respect that.
Any further discussion on the motion? Hearing none, those that support the motion to cut this? 4, those opposed? I am going to support removing this item for this year. Thank you. Back to you, Mr. Brunton. Pardon?
Yep.
The motion passed to remove that, correct, for this year. Go ahead, Councillor Brunton.
Thank you, Mayor Luke. I'm on page 13.
Okay.
It's the Smoke-Free Ontario, my favorite section of the Health Board budget. It's interesting, we've increased the program, but it's gone down. But anyways, we employ, the way I read it here, 3.89 people. I think it was 3.93 people last year. I guess that person, I doubt they have any mileage expense if they're only 0.989 of a person. But anyways, my question is, we spend, get this right here, we're looking at $402,000 on Smoke-Free Ontario for 3.89 people. And correct me, Marlene, if I'm wrong here, but that is to go out and check in the stores and check at the schools to promote all this stuff and the e-cigarettes. Is that the whole 9 yards in there?
Through the Mayor to Councillor Columbus, Smoke-Free Ontario has 3 programs within it. It's the enforcement piece, which you've spoken to. It's the coordination of those services, and it's the youth engagement. So there's actually three different programs that are within that bigger program.
They're starting to look more and more like as we go through the budget session.
So this is where the undercover agent goes out into the stores and underage or whatever and tries to buy cigarettes. Is that type of program in there?
Through the Mayor to Councillor Brunton, that's a part of the enforcement piece of the program, yes.
Okay, who is that underage person or whatever that you employ? Is that in the 3.89?
Just give me a second.
Or would that be in addition to the 3.89?
So through the Mayor to Councillor Brunton, yes, they are in there. The additional that you see there in the FTE was the council-approved tobacco enforcement officer that was approved 2 years ago and then approved again in the fall on a temporary basis.
Okay, my question to you is this. Of all these smoking programs, I'm going to ask it very clearly, involves going out X number of times to different locations, and if we don't go to those locations, I don't know who keeps track of it. I'm sure you keep track of it, but I'm sure there's nobody from the province that comes down here and checks on every inspection you make. If we cut that program, are we going to jail? Or I don't want to hear about, well, they might look at us and all that. My question.
Through the Mayor to Councillor Brunton, I would suspect or suggest that you wouldn't be going to jail, but if you provide that direction, I'll let you go. Not myself, but we do have performance indicators on a serious note that we do need to adhere to. So as we increase the FTEs and we're receiving additional funding to support those FTEs, which are currently at 100% funding, we are accountable to ensure that we've met those performance measures, which we are doing with the tobacco enforcement and our test shoppers.
Okay, but those performance indicators in your health audit recently brought before this council said that we were to do the best we could or can with that money. It didn't say we have to inspect everything according to your indicator level, I guess, if you want to call that. That's the way that audit
Through the mayor to Councillor Brunton, we have accountability agreements that specify what we shall do. We have to inspect each institution X amount of times, and that's throughout all of our performance indicators. We don't randomly, as a staff, choose how often we do it. We're instructed or mandated by the province, and we have to adhere to those accountability agreements that we, as staff, report on a quarterly basis to the ministry.
But we reviewed those accountability agreements, and nowhere in there did I see you must do this at X schools and X cigarette distributors, etc. That wasn't in there, Marlene. Anyways, I just find it unacceptable that we can employ almost 4 people and spend $400,000 to do this program. Anyways, Your Worship, I'm going to make another shot at a motion here, and it's going to be as follows. That staff be directed that the maximum levy increase to supplemental provincial cost-sharing programs be at 10%. You understand that?
I don't, simply because this particular budget is, the levy requirement is down about 24%. So could you just clarify what
Well,
you're
I'm not
looking for?
referring to this, just a smoke-free program. I'm talking about all the programs that are supplemented by the province, the 100%.
I didn't realize that.
The 75%. So what I'm saying is, let's keep that increase to 10%. I don't think that's unreasonable, when it's not really our job to look after it in the first place. We're going to ask or tell the province, yeah, we'll fund your programs with another 10% of taxpayers' dollars, and that's what we're doing.
So what your motion then is to say that any locally municipal levy supported programs of the province, we would only max our contribution at 10% per program.
Yeah, 30.
Say it again, I just want
Okay.
to understand it.
That the provincial programs, I'm going to word it so you understand it. The provincial programs that are funded 100% and 75% have a maximum increase in our tax levy of 10%. You understand that?
Our contribution would
Our
max,
contribution,
would
it
max
will
at
maximum.
10%
And-
of their
Yeah.
funding
Yes.
for all programs.
The 100%, 75% programs. Yeah.
Marlene, would you wish to respond?
Through the mayor to Councillor Brunton, I'm not clear on is it 100% or 75 or both, because if he's saying both, then that means all of the funding. And currently, the mandatory program is a cost shared, and we're at a 70-30, so a 10% increase, if that's what he's directing staff to do, would be impossible, quite honestly.
I don't think it is
Just a
impossible.
second, just a second.
What I'm saying is we get a grant and we give tax dollars applicable to that grant. And I'm saying the maximum we want to contribute to that program is 10% over and above what we're contributing now
So cap the increase
at 10%.
on any of our contributions to a max of 10%.
That's right.
I got it now.
The increase.
The increase, I
That's
got it
correct.
now, and you're making that a motion.
Yes.
Okay, speak to the motion. Did I get you? Let me check. I didn't get you. Do you want to speak to this motion?
I had another one, but I can definitely speak to this. Is
Okay.
did we not receive a report a while back that said, like, the 75% and the 100% programs? And I guess if we had a quick spreadsheet, it would help me for sure, because, you know, if there's some 100% programs and we're 200% over, I'd want to look at those if we're,
They're both
you know,
over.
a little bit more specific per program, because, as a matter of fact, I might not support a program, period. So I don't know how we would get more data on that before we call the question.
Your Worship. If I may, if it's confusing, it's not confusing in terms of 10% increase. Let's send it back to Marlene and tell her to come back with how that would impact. It's just tax dollars. And we have a certain program there that the province fund 100%, 75%. So we're saying, well, whatever we need in terms of tax dollars for those programs, the maximum we want to increase it is 10%. I don't think that's being unreasonable. I'll let Marlene come back with it.
Councillor Oliver, to the motion, please.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I think what Councillor Brunton is talking about, I'm looking at page 5 and 6 again, which is the overall summary of public health programs. And it's proposed to spend 9.767 million in 2017, and it's proposing to get 7.22 million in grants, which is a reduction from last year, and it's proposing to cost 2.446 million in levy, which is a $353,000 increase. I think I understand Councillor Brunton is saying, and I'm going to ask staff, but I think everything on that page is cost share in one way or another, is it not?
Through the mayor to Councillor Oliver, that is all of the programs wrapped into one. So it's our mandatory at the cost share 25-75, which we're currently at about 70-30. Yes. The program related and all of the additional programs, including those that are provided by other ministries such as the Ministry of Child and Youth Services. So that is everything combined. Yes. So 100% and cost shared programs.
Okay, so that is both the 100% ones, which we are supplementing some of already, because they're not being funded 100%, even though the formula said they would be. And there are other programs which were originally to be funded 75-25, and as I recall from discussions a year or more ago, even those ones are not really being funded fully 75-25, it's more like 70-30. And so I think Councillor Brunton's motion is just saying we would cap our increase for 2017. Instead of going a full 352,800 increase, we would cap it at a 10% increase of our levy contribution to those various cost share programs. I don't mean to put words in his mouth, but if that's what he's saying, then I can see the merits in that, Mr. Mayor. And quite frankly, we've talked about this as a council for at least 2 budget years before this one. And council will remember, I think the last number we were given a year or two ago, it was over $330,000 of levy at that time, which was going into supplementing the cost share programs above and beyond the formula that it was supposed to be. And I think if we're ever going to send a message, maybe this is the time to do it, and I think this would be the message. We're prepared to go 10% more, as Councillor Brunton said, but for this year, we just couldn't support more than a 10% increase in our supplement of those cost shares. So I like what he's saying, and I want to hear the other discussion, but I think at this point I would support that.
Yeah, and just for further clarification for me, Marlene, could I approach this just a little bit differently, somewhat the same, but on page 5, okay, when we go to the net levy requirement, the black line along the bottom, you're with me?
Yes.
We have a total proposed budget of $2.446 million. If this motion of only going 10%, would that mean instead of having a budget increase of $353,000 roughly, just to the right of that, it would be capped at $245,000 roughly, a difference of about $115,000, $116,000. Is that, and maybe I'm just not recognizing that different programs have different fundings on this page.
Yeah.
You wish to comment on that, just so in my mind I would see the savings?
I see our treasurer shaking his head no, and I'd have to agree, so I'll let the expert answer if I may.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I think what Councillor Brenton is asking for, if you take a look at the very bottom line, where it says Haldeman County's share, I'm sorry, other page, Norfolk County's share, it's 18.7%. He wants that number to be 10%. Is that, well, you said that you wanted to have, I mean, with all due respect, I thought what I heard you say was that you wanted the Norfolk County levy not to be more than 10%. And that number at the top of page 6 is in fact the Norfolk County share, which is 18.7%.
Actually, I'm looking at, Councillor Oliver hit it on the head. I'm looking at the bottom of line 5, it says 352,800 net levy.
Okay,
And I'm
but I thought I heard, sorry, Mr. Mayor, I just want
Yeah.
to make sure, I was going to jump in and get a clarification anyways.
Yeah.
I want to make sure that you're talking about the overall net levy being reduced from 16.8 to 10. But I thought I heard you say that you wanted Norfolk County's levy not to exceed 10%.
No, I'm referring the whole levy, because
Okay.
I realize Haldeman's going to get a share.
Okay.
In all due
I understand.
respect,
So it's to reduce the 16.8 to 10.
I don't know exactly, I don't know what the exact wording was, but I don't think we're going to start as a Board of Health, start cutting our portion and not cutting Haldeman's portion. I think that's pretty dangerous territory, in my opinion. We're here representing both counties.
That's right.
And I think we look always at the overall net levy, and then the formula of 60/40 or whatever it is a portion. Go ahead, Councillor Broughton.
Okay, well, if you look at the forecasted actual for 2016, it's 1883. And we're talking 352. Well, the actual budget proposed is almost $200,000 difference already. If you look at the 2016 approved budget, I'm going to call it 2.1,
Right?
and then you go over, it was 1.83, well, we'll call it 1.9, okay? So that's 200,000 right there. So I don't see where it would be difficult to bring that 352 to 10%. Do you follow me? It's pretty simple to...
Well, to make it simple for me, with your motion, I believe, and Mr. Ford could comment again, that the $352,800 increase is 16.8
That's correct.
over the proposed budget. If your motion says no higher than 10%, you would be reducing that increase by 6.8.
Yes.
And I'm guessing it's around $115,000 decrease on this budget. Those are my figures. I'm not always 100% on. Is that the way you intend this?
Yes.
Thank you. Councillor Oliver, please.
Mr. Mayor, I just did the quick math on what's in our document here, and if you look at that net levy requirement line at the bottom of page 5,
Yes.
the proposed net levy requirement of $2,446,000 represents a 16.8% over the original approved budget,
That's correct.
Correct.
which, as Councillor Brunton just said, is a couple of $100,000 almost higher than what they anticipate year end.
That's right.
So I don't think the impact is quite as bad as it might be perceived. And Mr. Mayor, if I did the math again, if we were to reduce that by the 10 to a maximum of a 10%, that, in my math, represented a $143,000 reduction. Okay, I'm seeing a couple of nods from staff, so I think I'm at least on the same wavelength.
So that 352.8 would be reduced by
By
140?
143,420. Okay.
143,320.
That would be the reduction.
Any further discussion on this motion?
Yeah, they've already identified some of that, but.
Yeah. It's pretty straightforward in my mind, but...
Oh, I see. Okay, I got it. John?
No, they'd have to find
No. We'd have to...
Mr. Mayor, I think the net, that's the net reduction after subsidies. The gross number,
What do you
which
want?
represents the cost of the programs, would be over $200,000.
All right, do you want to bring that up?
Kathy's figured out roughly $210,000. So we'd have to decrease the amount of things that are shown here on page 4.2. All those expenditures would have to be decreased by about 210 grand. Okay.
And,
Yeah.
Your Worship?
Mr. Brunton?
Councillor Oliver brought a good point up. We cut 37,000 out of here a few minutes ago, and I would even go to, I agree that we can include that as part of the 10%. So we're not, overall, that reduction is 10%, not the 37,000 we've already taken out. That would be included in that 10%.
In that 10%.
Yeah. And your worship, if I may say, like, I think Councillor Clement, somebody mentioned it, as long as we continue to look after the province's responsibility, they're going to sit back and watch us do it. So I think we got to send the message. Thank you.
Okay, so if the $37,570, which we previously approved already, if that is to be included in your motion as part of the cap of 10%, Mr. Ford, I would like to know what the amount is. So we have two ways to do it. We can do the motion that you have, which is less the 37,570, and those motions are still in order, or what's the full amount and we can cancel those motions. I don't care how we do it. I'm going to ask the clerk how he would like it done. I mean, we've already approved the 37,570, so maybe we can figure out the new figure and subtract it and put that motion on.
That's fine.
Either way, the net's the same.
Exactly, and I you know, I don't want to handcuff Marlene. I mean, she can redistribute that any way she wants within the programs.
So do we know then what that figure will be, so I can get on with this motion? Sorry? So 105,850, and that does not include the 37,570. That's already okay. So, Mr. Brunton, I would suggest that your motion then be to further reduce, in order to cap at 10%, a reduction of 105,850. Okay?
That's fine.
And then already we've done 37.5 on top of that.
That's right.
Okay? Councillor Oliver, to the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As long as it's understood that that 105,850 or whatever it was is from the levy. It's not a total expenditure reduction, it's our levy subsidy.
Portion, yeah.
That, I think that's the message we're trying to pass on. And I don't know whether that messes things up for staff or not. They'd have to recalculate how much of a program expenditure reduction is represented by $105,850 in levy reduction. But as we've been saying for the last couple of years, we've been subsidizing well over the 330,000. So I think it could just be taken off the bottom or off the top. I don't know, perhaps not. But that's the intent, I think, isn't it, Councillor Brunton, that this would strictly be levy?
Yep.
Mr. Black, to the motion again.
This is the motion. I'm going to speak to the motion?
At this point, yes.
Okay, I'm not going to support it. And I do understand, and I'm just as frustrated as anybody else with the provincial municipal relationship. And that's why I brought up the last time I spoke on the other, Councillor Brunton's other motion about the lobbying aspect of either sending a letter or contacting Minister Hoskins or through AMO, through him directly, and explain our frustration to him. I think it would be a better and more diplomatic way of doing it. I'm not sure if the intent of this motion is to send the province a message. I doubt very much if they will get the message. Being sent this way and in this form, I do not think it will work. So, you know, if I thought it would work and that they would say, oh, yes, Norfolk County, I got your message and we're going to take care of that right away. I doubt it very much. I think there are other processes, and yes, they are as frustrating as anything, but I think that they are the more suitable way to get at the minister and get at the province and do it directly or through AMO.
I would like, thank you, our clerk, to read the motion then, please.
That the Board of Health cut a remaining $105,850 from the net levy from the Board of Health budget with the goal of capping the the 2017 net levy requirement increase to 10%.
10% of the levy portion. Local levy portion. Councillor Height to the motion again.
Thank you, Mayor Luke. You know, we can blame the province or we can blame ourselves. Several other municipalities come within the funded program. The County of Brant, they're 100% funded programs from the province, somehow managed to come within that number. So whose problem is it when other municipalities can make it work? Several other municipalities, they come back and their staff say, listen, we're, X amount of dollars short, and the municipalities say, okay, well, what are we going to cut that doesn't get us in jail? I haven't been able to find a Google article anywhere that ever said that a municipal councillor has been jailed for not meeting the provincial funding for health care.
They always put the GM in jail, not the councillors. So, okay, that's Marlene, and then back to you for a second time on the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to clarify, given that we have the opportunity and the privilege of sharing our medical officer of health, that Brantford has exactly the same struggles and they are being supported. And we would be happy to secure those numbers and share them with the Board of Health. They are being funded and they are being supported by the levy.
Councillor Black.
A question through you to Marlene. And I know this type of an approach, although it's expressing our frustration and trying to do something about it, what will it do to you and your department? How much time will you spend trying to deal with this motion if it is passed? Will it be disruptive to you and your staff? Will you be spinning your wheels trying to deal with this rather than actually doing the job that you're supposed to be doing?
Through the Mayor to Councillor Black, thank you for your question, first of all. This would be very disruptive. This isn't just 105% reduction overall. This would be significantly more because we're asking for the levy reduction overall. This would basically have to have us look at every single program, which Susan and I were planning to do for 2017 anyways, but in short order, basically become a full-time job. And this will be work also for the board. We would not be reducing any of these services. We would be providing you information and seeking your direction on what services you would like to cut, and then we would be providing that information to the Ministry of Health as our mandate.
Any further discussion on the motion? Councillor Oliver.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to remind the council, or the board rather, that even if this motion passes, our increased levy contribution for 2017 to these programs would be $209,380. That's over and above what we've been contributing in previous years.
Thank you. Certainly over last year. Yes. How many times do you want to talk on this motion?
I just want to speak to Councillor Black's reluctance to go along with this, and I'm going to say this. We can contact the ministry through a letter or AMO, whatever you want. That still doesn't mean we can't cut it. Anyways, I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Are we ready to call the question? Any further comments to the motion or questions? You've heard the motion. Those in favor? Those opposed? That motion is carried. Thank you. Now, back to this document. Anything further you wish to discuss on this? Councillor Height, please.
Thank you, Mayor Luke, and through you to staff. Under page 13, materials and supplies. You had an approved budget of $45,000 and the forecasted actuals are closer to $80,000. What went wrong?
If we just need a minute, we'll have to pull it up and just go down the line item here.
Okay. Maybe our treasurer could pull that up as well. Third one. Second number. Materials and supplies. Mr. Treasurer, are you able to pull that up? Materials and supplies? Materials and supplies, Smoke-Free Ontario.
This is on page 13, the Smoke-Free Ontario. He wants to look at the that's okay, materials and supplies, because the actuals last year are looked at to be about 80,000 when in fact it was budgeted at 45. So wants to know the rationale for that.
Be appropriate to circulate those? No?
You can, but I think it's, the motion is done.
Is it passed?
Yeah.
Take that up. Don't blame me.
Let's take a note, yeah. Okay, so I think
Through the mayor to Councillor Height, that was a recent one-time funding that we received for the nicotine patches of $27,100. The budget just hasn't caught up to the funding that was received. So we did receive that additional funding from the province.
Okay, so then now you're looking for $60,000 and this time around. Yeah, $63,000.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Height. It will be annualized, so that $27,100 will continue, so it's been rolled up into that number.
So I'm still confused how we went from $27,000 to $60,200.
Could you clarify where you're getting the 20,000, Councillor Height, please?
The 27,000, isn't that what you said?
Oh,
Page 15, John.
Yeah.
Or 13, sorry. Smoke-free Ontario.
So through the mayor to Councillor Height, you can't see it. We've opened up the lines, and there's 27,100 for the nicotine patches that we've received from the province.
Okay, I'm just waiting to see it so we can all see it.
smoke free.
Yeah, that's it, John.
Smoke free Ontario, yes.
Materials and supplies.
Thank you, John. That's got her.
Materials and supplies again. Medical supplies, that's the patches. What is this meetings expenses? You had a budget of $3,000 and it made it go up to $12,000?
TCAN seems to be the one that's went from 1,000 to 10,003. Could you explain that, Marlene, what those meetings are?
$200 for refreshments. A lot of packs of smoke, sorry.
Through the mayor to Councillor Height. This is for the TCAN activities, which is a regional activities, and although it's in there, we do get reimbursed by the province indirectly through the TCAN association through Hamilton.
Okay, hang on, it's bouncing around. Meeting expenses, how did we see that before? If you could minimize that, back to meeting expenses, yeah. Yeah, minimize that. See, it still says it's almost $12,000 with an approved budget of $3,000. How does someone go over their budget that much?
Mr. Mayor, I think what Marlene was saying was, yes, there's a $10,000 item in there for the TCAN program, but it's refunded, or it's funded from
There's an offsetting
the province.
So there's a line item under the provincial grants account then?
Is that where it is? What's that? Oh, financial charges, right there.